was one of the most powerful figures in music. A billionaire mogul, a cultural icon, a name that dominated the charts and shaped hip-hop for decades. But in 2025, everything came crashing down. What started as quiet whispers online turned into full-blown headlines. Now, Sean Diddy Combs is no longer sitting at the top of the industry. He's sitting in a courtroom, facing allegations so dark they've left fans stunned and the industry shaken. Sex trafficking, abuse, racketeering, and more than a dozen shocking testimonies. But how did we get here? And who's behind these explosive claims that are threatening to dismantle the empire of one of music's biggest legends? Today, we're diving deep into the trial that has the world watching, piece by piece, witness by witness, accusation by accusation. And what's being revealed might just change everything you thought you knew about Diddy. For decades, Sean Diddy Combs was untouchable. From launching Bad Boy Records in the 90s to producing hits for artists like Notorious B.I.G., Faith Evans, and Mary J. Blige, he wasn't just part of the music industry, he was the music industry. He rebranded himself countless times. Puff Daddy, P. Diddy, Diddy, each reinvention more polished than the last. His empire grew to include fashion lines, liquor brands, reality shows, and even a cable network. He wasn't just an artist, he was a mogul, a billionaire, a symbol of success in Black America. But behind the wealth, the parties, and the red carpet appearances, there were rumors, allegations whispered in the background, stories that never made it past blog posts or anonymous tweets. Until now. In 2023, the public saw the first major crack in Diddy's reputation when singer and ex-girlfriend Cassie Ventura filed a bombshell lawsuit, accusing him of years of physical and emotional abuse. The case was quickly settled out of court, but it opened the floodgates. Soon, other lawsuits followed. Dancers, assistants, and former employees began stepping forward with disturbing stories, alleging coercion, violence, surveillance, and worse. And suddenly, the legacy Diddy had spent 30 years building began to collapse. By early 2025, the accusations had snowballed into a full-scale federal investigation. And on May 5th, the unthinkable happened. Sean Combs was indicted on multiple federal charges, including sex trafficking, racketeering, witness intimidation, and obstruction of justice. It was no longer about civil suits or industry gossip. This was a criminal trial in Manhattan federal court with serious consequences, the kind of case that destroys reputations forever. And the first person to take the stand would set the tone for everything that followed. When Mia took the stand, the courtroom changed. Her real name was withheld for privacy and safety, but her words were loud enough to echo far beyond those four walls. A former personal assistant to Diddy from 2009 to 2017, Mia painted a chilling portrait of life inside his inner circle. She wasn't just organizing calendars or answering phones. She was, in her own words, trapped inside a system of fear and control. Her testimony opened with claims of verbal and physical abuse. According to Mia, Combs would hurl objects in fits of rage, berate her for the smallest mistakes, and force her to work under inhumane conditions, sometimes going days without sleep. But what shook the room wasn't just the treatment she endured, it was what she witnessed. Mia revealed the existence of secret events known internally as freak-offs, parties allegedly organized and hosted by Diddy, involving escorts, drugs, and what she described as non-consensual activity masked as fun. She testified that she was often forced to assist with logistics and cleanup, even if she objected. Her voice cracked when she admitted being coerced into participating in some of these events herself. But it didn't stop there. She recounted how Combs allegedly forbade her from locking her bedroom door. He tracked her movements, monitored her phone use, and isolated her from friends and family. It was, she said, like being in a cult. He wanted total control over everyone around him. The courtroom listened in silence as Mia broke down describing one moment in particular, discovering Cassie Ventura, Diddy's longtime partner, after what she believed was a violent encounter. She was shaking, terrified, Mia said, and I couldn't do anything. We were all too afraid. She testified that attempts to alert authorities during her time working for Combs were routinely shut down. In multiple incidents, she claimed police showed up but left without intervening, feeding a growing suspicion that Diddy had people in his pocket. the weight of Mia's words marked a turning point. No longer was this trial just about one person's allegations. It became a window into a world allegedly ruled by power, manipulation, and unchecked influence. And just when the courtroom thought they'd heard it all, another witness stepped forward, offering a very different but equally disturbing view into Diddy's private world. Just when the courtroom had begun to absorb the shock of Mia's testimony, another voice entered the scene, one that peeled back the carefully crafted image Diddy had spent decades building. Deontay Nash, Combs' former stylist, was expected to offer insight into fashion, branding, maybe a few behind-the-scenes moments from red carpets. But instead, his testimony added fuel to a growing fire and introduced a new layer of personal conflict that prosecutors were quick to seize on. Nash told the court about a hidden affair between Cassie Ventura and NFL player Andre Branch, an affair that allegedly ignited a storm of rage in Diddy. According to Nash, Diddy's jealousy wasn't just personal, it was dangerous. He described moments where Combs would obsess over Cassie's movements, question her loyalty, and interrogate staff about who she was texting, calling, or even standing next to at events. Nash claimed that the affair became a trigger, one that intensified Diddy's paranoia and led to what he called emotional warfare behind closed doors. He felt betrayed, Nash said on the stand, not just as a man, but as someone who believed he owned every part of her life. According to Nash, it wasn't just about Cassie, it was about control. Diddy allegedly saw everyone in his orbit, stylists, assistants, bodyguards, partners, as part of his brand. If anyone stepped out of line or made him feel disrespected, retaliation was swift and severe. Nash described seeing Cassie verbally abused in front of others, humiliated for minor mistakes, and isolated from people she cared about. He also said the atmosphere among employees was one of silence and fear. No one questioned Diddy. No one dared. This testimony added to the prosecution's narrative that Diddy didn't just abuse his power, he thrived on it. And the moment anyone challenged that control, he lashed out. But this wasn't the only revelation that raised eyebrows in court, because what came next suggested that Diddy's influence may have extended far beyond his employees, into the world of law enforcement itself. If the testimony so far painted Diddy as a controlling and abusive figure in private, Section 4 of the trial exposed a much darker possibility, that he may have had the power to silence not only his inner circle, but the justice system itself. This part of the trial focused on troubling claims that Combs had influence over law enforcement, and that his connections may have helped him avoid scrutiny for years. Mia, the former assistant, once again took the stand, this time with allegations that sent shockwaves through the courtroom. She testified that there were multiple occasions when the police were called due to disturbing incidents, but no action was taken. In one instance, she described hearing violent yelling from inside Diddy's residence and calling authorities. When they arrived, she said, they spoke briefly to Combs, and then left without even stepping inside. No questions asked, no follow-up. It was as if the badge meant nothing when it came to dealing with someone of Diddy's stature. Prosecutors emphasized that this wasn't an isolated event. Mia testified that she and others in the household began to believe that the police were either intimidated by Diddy's celebrity or outright compromised. But the most chilling allegation came from a 2011 incident involving rapper Kid Cudi, a name that has popped up before in Combs-related controversies. Back in 2011, Kid Cudi's home reportedly caught fire under mysterious circumstances. The connection? Prosecutors are now suggesting that Combs may have been involved in the fire, and that the fingerprint evidence linking him to the scene was mysteriously deleted before the investigation went anywhere. Deleted, gone. Just like that. It's a claim that sounds like a thriller movie plot, but in this courtroom, under oath, it's being presented as a possible reality. The defense was quick to dismiss the allegation, calling it a baseless conspiracy theory. But the prosecution countered with another bombshell, that multiple witnesses recalled Diddy bragging about having friends in high places who could make things disappear. These claims have raised serious questions not just about Diddy's behavior, but about the systems that may have allowed it to go unchecked. If proven true, they don't just point to abuse. They point to a decades-long pattern of escaping accountability through wealth, power, and intimidation. And all of it culminates in the testimony of one person whose story has haunted the trial from the very beginning. Cassie Ventura. Up to this point, the courtroom had heard chilling stories of abuse, manipulation, and power unchecked. But nothing hit harder than the moment Cassie Ventura, Diddy's former girlfriend and longtime collaborator, took the stand. For years, Cassie had been silent. Whispers of their toxic relationship had circulated through the music industry, but she had never spoken publicly until now. Her testimony was not just emotional, it was devastating. With the courtroom hanging on her every word, Cassie recounted a relationship marked by psychological control, coercion, and at times, outright violence. She painted a picture of a man who isolated her from friends and family, who monitored her movements, and who allegedly turned moments of intimacy into tools of manipulation. She spoke of being forced to attend the now infamous freak-offs, parties described earlier by Mia that involved escorts and heavy substance use. According to Cassie, these events weren't optional. They were staged, controlled, and used by Combs as a form of dominance and humiliation. But it wasn't just the events themselves. It was how Diddy allegedly used fear to maintain control. Cassie described multiple instances of physical abuse, some of which left her bruised and emotionally shattered. At one point in her testimony, she recalled a night where she tried to leave him, only to be physically restrained and threatened. "I felt like a prisoner," she told the court. "He knew how to break people down, emotionally, mentally, physically. He made sure you believed you had no way out." One particularly harrowing moment came when Cassie recounted how she once attempted to reach out to police for help, only to be warned by Diddy that it would end badly for her. She says that was the moment she realized how powerful he truly was, not just in music, but in society. Cassie also spoke about the toll the relationship took on her mental health. She detailed years of therapy, anxiety, and trauma that she is still working through today. Her decision to testify, she said, wasn't about revenge, but about healing and finally speaking the truth. Her words shook the courtroom. Journalists in attendance reported visible emotion from members of the jury. Even those who had come in skeptical of the case admitted that Cassie's testimony had changed everything. It wasn't just about one man's alleged crimes. It was about the culture of silence and fear that had protected him for years. And Cassie, once a quiet figure in the background of Diddy's empire, had now become the face of a reckoning. As Cassie's testimony echoed beyond the courtroom, the shockwaves began rippling through the entertainment world. What had started as a tightly guarded federal trial had now exploded into a cultural reckoning. The media response was immediate and intense. News outlets from around the globe began publishing detailed coverage of the trial, with headlines ranging from Diddy's dark side exposed to hip-hop's Me Too moment. Networks like CNN and PBS began running nightly recaps of the courtroom developments, and long-form investigative articles started connecting the dots between Diddy's public persona and what was allegedly happening behind closed doors. Social media became a battleground. On platforms like X, formerly Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, users dissected every new detail, from the testimonies of Mia and Cassie to the resurfacing of past allegations many had either forgotten or ignored. Some fans were in disbelief, defending the mogul and urging others to wait for the facts. But for many others, the evidence and testimonies were too overwhelming to dismiss. Hashtags like WAD, Surviving Diddy, and Justice for Cassie began trending, with survivors of abuse across the world sharing their own stories in solidarity. The music industry, once Diddy's kingdom, began to distance itself. Brands, collaborators, and longtime associates quietly pulled back. Several artists who had once praised Combs went silent. Industry insiders began whispering that major streaming services were reevaluating whether to promote his music at all. Perhaps most telling was the response from Bad Boy Records, the legendary label Diddy founded in the 1990s. While the company hasn't issued an official statement, insiders say there's internal turmoil about whether the brand can even survive the backlash. After all, Diddy was Bad Boy. His face, his energy, his drive were the foundation of its entire identity. But now, that foundation is crumbling, and it's not just reputations at stake, it's financial empires. Diddy's assets, including his media company Revolt, luxury fashion partnerships, and real estate holdings, could all be vulnerable depending on the trial's outcome. Multiple civil suits are reportedly in the pipeline, and federal prosecutors have hinted that more charges could be filed depending on what else emerges. There's a growing sense that this trial isn't just about one man's alleged crimes. It's about an entire system of silence, complicity, and unchecked power. The question now isn't whether Diddy will be convicted. It's how far the collapse will reach, and whether the music industry will finally confront the toxic behaviors it's long protected. As the trial of Sean Diddy Combs continues to unfold, the world watches with bated breath. The testimonies so far have painted a troubling picture of alleged abuse, control, and influence that goes far beyond one individual. Whether or not Diddy is ultimately convicted, this case has already sparked a crucial conversation about accountability and power in the entertainment industry. For decades, Diddy was seen as a towering figure, a music mogul, entrepreneur, and cultural icon. But now, that legacy is under unprecedented scrutiny. The trial forces us all to reckon with the darker side of fame and the cost of turning a blind eye to misconduct. What happens next will shape not only Diddy's future, but could also redefine industry standards and inspire victims everywhere to come forward. This is more than a trial. It's a moment of reckoning. Stay tuned as this story develops. And remember, the truth matters because it can change everything. Thanks for watching. If you found this video insightful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more in-depth coverage of the biggest stories in entertainment. Until next time, this is the Pop Recap.